2023 meeting of the Montclair Historic Preservation Commission. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the HPC. Notice has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting a copy of the notice on the first floor of this municipal building and sending a copy to the Montclair Times, the Star Ledger, and the Herald News. This is a public hearing in which any members of the public are welcome to attend. The meeting agenda is available on the Montclair website as a link to the township's YouTube channel, where the hearing can be viewed live or after the fact. The hearing is also being televised on Montclair Channel 34. So, Mr. Sevilla, could call the roll, please?
Yes, good evening, everybody. Ms. Bennett.
Present.
Mr. Hindman.
Here.
Mr. Rooney. Mr. Reimnitz.
Here.
Mr. Graham.
Here.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes, here.
Ms. Bauer. Mr. Connolly's excused, and I'm also here. Do you want me to announce what's being moved?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So the only thing being moved from this agenda is the Label Street Factory local landmark nomination for the manufacturing district. That's going to be on the March 9th, 2023 meeting.
All right. Okay, thank you, Tommy. Approval of minutes. We've been very busy this month. So we've had 3 meetings. We've had 2 special meetings and a regular meeting. So why don't we do this in order? The first meeting, which was our regular scheduled meeting, was January 12th, 2023. Has everyone had a chance to look at those minutes? Are there any changes or?
Just one minor change on page 7, line 32. It says, Ms. Bennett stated that thus far there has been no dialogue with the HPC on the plan. I thought that was no dialogue with the planning board on the plan, right?
Yeah.
So just wanted to change that note. And I thought otherwise was fine.
Okay, great. May I have a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
I move to accept as amended.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, our next meeting, which was a special meeting, was on January 19th, 2023. And we have a very brief summary of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at those? Any?
I have not seen that. Can I look at those just
sure.
quickly?
We'll just give Mr. Reimnitz a quick
Okay.
minute.
Oh, and I just want to correct the record. Mr. Rooney is excused as well. He did tell me he wasn't going to be able to make it tonight.
I thought so.
Okay, well, there's not much.
No, it was
there,
very.
yeah. Okay.
So may I have a motion to accept that minute?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Can we just return to, to January 12th? I know we've already accepted them, but I didn't have my notes written. There is a change. On page 2, it's a very brief, small change. Johanna Coxeter, that's a J, not a Y. Page 2. And then on page 4, okay, on page 4, the second paragraph, this is about the fence. The commission suggested that the privacy panels along Claremont Avenue be scaled back or removed altogether, and that landscaping be used. I guess we can keep that in there because the condition was that they not be used, they be removed. So we can leave that as is? Okay, sorry. So the only one that I, is the
typo.
initial, okay. Okay, so and then January 27th, which was also a special meeting. That's when we revised the resolution, which is presented to the planning board and the township council. That was on the Lackawanna Plaza redevelopment plan. Has everyone had a chance to read that? Are there any changes or suggestions?
I guess the word purview is probably not the
Where are you?
On the first substantive, Commissioner stated the reasoning for amending and the recommended better reflect their purview. I'm not sure.
Reflect their
Probably say
opinion?
Reflect their recommendation.
Recommendations, that's a good catch. To clarify
I know that was minor, but that's.
and better reflect their recommendations. Okay. So, may I have a motion to accept the minutes of January 27th as amended?
Motion.
Second? Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Now we're going to public comment. Is there anybody here that wishes to make a statement as to anything having to do with HPC matters? Okay. No public comment. We'll close this section for public comment. And Tommy's already reported that the Label Street Factory landmark nomination will be heard next month. We'll move on to committees. And I'd just like to report that the Minor Application Committee met on February 2nd, 2023. We heard 4 applications. We heard 2023-01 at 11 South Fullerton Avenue, awning and signage restaurant that was approved. We heard 2023-02 at 6 South Park Street for signage, which was approved. We heard 2023-03 at 46 Fairfield Street, which signage and awning, which was approved. And we heard 2023-04 at 517 Bloomfield Avenue, the Wine Guy store. That was for signage. That was approved. We will be meeting next Tuesday, February 16th at 11:30, I believe. The Design Review Committee will be meeting to discuss 403-405 Bloomfield Avenue, which is a property that has come back with major modifications on the facade. And as it is in the Central Business District, we're going to be looking at that again. I just want to report that the state, I received a letter from the state this month, and last year they had sent another letter, that they were going to start research on Glenfield Park to designate it as a New Jersey Historic Register. And subsequently, this January, we received a letter that the state is not going to start that research because of the building that's going on down at Glenfield. They're putting in a new field house and the parking lots, and the state feels that it's it doesn't lend itself to a historic site. So I just wanted to mention that. Next Thursday, I'm actually going to be giving a talk for the Montclair History Channel on the history of Lackawanna, and it's going to be a virtual meeting, Montclair History, 7 o'clock on Thursday, the 16th. It's going to be a reprise of the talk I gave during the last Lackawanna redevelopment plan, but I've got a little bit more research in it now. It's about the history of the place.
Solely the history and not on the new planning.
It's the history, yeah, just to highlight the history. And, the architect, the buildings, and really just the overall development of it. The third train station, different. So, Tommy, now we go to the committees, and I've been trying to find them in my bylaws, because we have to make sure that everybody knows the committee that they're on this year.
I found them in my copy, so I can
Great,
I can
okay.
go through them. Okay, I hope this is the most current version of the bylaws. 2017, does that sound correct?
Yes, I think that's when we
Okay.
changed it.
Okay, so the committees are Design Review,
2019.
2019. Then I might not have the most up-to-date version, but I don't think that these have probably changed.
It probably
since
is
then. So they are design review, education and outreach, nominations, minor applications, and revisions. And then I can go through quickly what each of those does. I'm just going to read from the bylaws.
Yeah, if you would.
Yeah, the Design Review and Redevelopment Committee is responsible for advising and assisting the Development Review Committee, Planning Board, and Board of Adjustment when requested on all matters, including pending applications for development and the development of redevelopment plans, which have potential impact on historic buildings, structures, objects, sites, or districts in the township, or on the physical character and ambiance of any portion of the township or region. So typically, the Design Review Committee is assembled when a development application comes back for resolution compliance, when they're getting their permits for a condition related to something that the HPC has recommended to the Board of Adjustment or the Planning Board that made it into a condition of approval. That's typically when that committee meets. Education and Outreach, the Education and Outreach Committee is responsible for increasing public awareness of the value of historic, architectural, and cultural preservation by developing and participating in public information programs. The committee also ensures information is available to residents of historic buildings or districts concerning guidelines for rehabilitation and design criteria for new construction. Kathleen, do you want to say any more about what members of that committee typically do?
Well, the one thing that is important is that we award the Preservation Awards. So if anyone is home watching this tonight, keep in mind that the awards, Tommy, if you could put it up now, starting now on the website, we have 3 categories, and everything should be submitted April because we traditionally award it in May, Preservation Month. We also, like the talk I will give at the Montclair History Center. I've done that before in the past for Lackawanna, for the Nolan Plan, and also I'll be doing the Label Street talk based on the nomination report, which we'll be hearing next week. So it's just a way to really tell people about preservation and how preservation enhances life in individuals, but throughout the community. So, and then also, education and outreach, also that grants are part of that, correct? Or is that a separate
I
one?
feel like we had grants as a separate one. I don't see
Okay.
it listed in the bylaws, but
Well, I think that's,
in the past, we've had a separate grants.
okay, all right. But
Subcommittee.
it's also grants that we apply as a CLG government, entity. We're entitled to ask the state for monies to study different sections in the town as historic districts and make sure that these properties are listed with the state. So if anything comes up in terms of, demolition or facade changes, that we're able to have we have a really good, I think, inventory now of residences and also commercial properties. Someday we should really make a list and figure out how many we actually have that are state surveyed. We're
That are
great.
surveyed with this, I did that recently.
You did? So how,
Yeah, because I think we're going to be once the amendment is through, I think we may be mailing out notices to all of the property owners that are affected.
right.
There's a lot, 3,500
I was going to say,
something.
right, I
yeah.
think it's around in the 3,000 area.
If we have the budget for it, that's going to be expensive to do.
Okay, all right, thanks. So I think that is education and outreach.
Okay. For the minor applications, I'm just going to summarize because it's kind of wordy. But essentially, the minor applications committee meets once every 2 weeks if there's any applications in, usually for signage in one of the historic districts, but sometimes things like awnings or fences in certain situations if it's not super impactful. And that's mostly it. It's usually signs, awnings, things like that, which we do get a lot of applications for. And so those are held every 2 weeks currently, but they're canceled whenever there's no applications in. And that's through actually all of these committees usually meet through WebEx.
And every month we usually have about 6 minor applications
Right.
if we meet, 6 to 8 if we meet twice.
Right, and the meetings are usually pretty short, half an hour or so. Okay, so that's the minor applications. And then the revisions committee, I'll just read this. The commission provides advice on applications for development submitted by either the planning board or board of adjustment for development in historic zoning districts or on historic sites designated on the zoning or official map or identified in any component element of the master plan. As a condition of approved certificates of appropriateness and requested conditions advised by the commissions to either the planning board or board of adjustment pursuant to Montclair Code 347142, the commission may task the revisions committee with the following. On-site review and final selection of materials and finishes. Let's see. The committee is responsible for review of historic building elements and fabric proposed for modification, rehabilitation or removal consistent with the approved certificate of appropriateness or conditions of approval. Yeah, that's it.
So that's really just compliance, really, with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, although sometimes the design review committee does that. So I think revisions, we've been traditionally using that for when something has been approved by the HPC and then they want to make some type of minor modification to it, then the revisions committee will review that. If they think it's significant enough to go back to the full HPC, then they'll make that recommendation. And then grants, I guess, if maybe nested under education and outreach.
I think that, yeah, I don't think we need any further explanation
Yeah.
on that. We did apply for a grant for the upcoming cycle.
We did.
Which is the continuation of the commuter area up in Upper Montclair, a residential section. So Tommy, do you have the list of members that from last year?
Yes.
And maybe you could read that out and see if there's any changes?
So
Anybody wants
Ms.
to
Bennett is
volunteer?
really kind of on all of the committees, so I won't go through hers. Mr. Hindman was on the minor application subcommittee, and we kind of had an ad hoc demolition committee, but that was at the beginning of the demolition ordinance process. Mr. Rooney was grants, design review, and landmarks, or nominations. Mr. Reimnitz was minor applications, revisions, and then also that demolition ad hoc subcommittee. Mr. Graham was design review and grants, and Mr. Sweeney was revisions.
Good. Does anyone, would
Well,
you like to?
Since revisions and design review are very close to each other, I would vote to join the design review committee as well as revisions and the minor application.
Okay, let me make sure.
We do have 3 on the
Yeah,
design
we-
review, so we'd have a quorum.
There's already 3 on that one.
Yeah,
so
we
we
have-
don't
Oh,
have a
there-
fourth.
okay.
We'd have a quorum, sorry.
Okay.
Unless
Yeah.
somebody else
No
wants to
problem.
drop off.
I'm glad everyone's working hard on that. Okay.
So does everybody want to remain on the same committees that they were this
Do you have the
previous
list?
year?
Can you tell us?
By committee?
Yes.
I can try. Minor applications was, again, Ms. Bennett is on all of them, so I'm not going to name her for each of these, but minor applications was Mr. Hindman and Mr. Reimnitz.
Mm-hmm.
Revisions was, besides Ms. Bennett, Mr. Reimnitz and Mr. Sweeney. Design review was Mr. Rooney and Mr. Graham. And grants, Mr. Rooney and Mr. Graham. And then nominations or landmarks was Mr. Rooney, in addition to Ms. Bennett.
Okay. As I'm, what is that called? The
Ex officio.
right. Does that? Can we have 3? I'm just thinking. Can John go on to the, or does that?
Well, as long
into-
as you're not there.
Present.
At the meeting, yeah.
How does that sound?
It's up to you. You
Well,
have
I'll
your
get-
fingers, you have your fingers, if you feel
Well, you can
comfortable
let
with
me.
that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we do that? Put John on design review.
And you will not be on design.
Right, and you
Okay.
just tell me what, if anything comes up, I'll just review what you've
Okay.
looked at and what you've decided,
Okay.
okay? All right,
And
All right.
Tommy, I'm actually gonna step down from minor applications.
Okay. Does anybody else want to scoop up
Yeah.
that spot, or? We still have three, because
Yeah.
Janice, the director of planning, is on that
Yeah.
committee as well,
Okay.
so we can, that's
That-
probably
That's a
fine.
fairly easy
Thursday
committee.
afternoon.
Yeah, Thursday afternoon,
Right,
looking at things quickly. Okay.
right. Okay, great. All right, thank you. Thanks for the volunteer. It's an added aspect. Okay, next, we have resolutions. So we have resolution, how could I forget that? Resolution 2022-40, 30 North Mountain Avenue. This is the fence around the Schultz House on Upper Mountain Avenue. We've met for this, I think, 3 times, and now we finally have a resolution. Has everyone read this? Okay. I have to admit, I was a little panicked when I read it again today, and I called Tommy in a panic. But we're stating definitely that the fence shall not utilize privacy panels. So just to make that clear. So we need a motion to approve this resolution.
Motion to approve?
And second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And then we have the HPC Annual Report from 2022. Did everybody get a chance to look through this? Okay. Tommy, thank you, put it together. I just had 2 additions, which were an addition to local participation on number 2, which is to provide copies of any historic preservation ordinances, amendments, regulations, bylaws, or guidelines enacted during this period. And we actually did adopt the residential design guidelines on January 13th, 2022. So Tommy's going to add that. And then the second addition was to public participation, number 3, list of all undertaking initiated by the local government during this period and which affected a property listing on the New Jersey Register of Historic Places. So I asked him to add, the Township of Montclair initiated the Lackawanna Plaza redevelopment plan. This site is listed on the New Jersey Register of Historic Places, and it was listed on August 7th, 1972, and the Township redevelopment plan was initiated in October of 2022. So please add that to it. Okay?
Because Kathleen talked to me about this a little bit earlier today, so I already did a little bit of these edits, but I included in that section the link to the draft plan, as well as I was going to attach your guys' resolution as an appendix to the
Oh, good.
report, as well as the survey, the nomination form for the train station as an
Oh,
appendix
great.
as well.
Okay, that's great. All right, so
Okay,
that,
Tommy,
And the
can I-
amended resolution, obviously, right? The most recent amended
Yes.
resolution.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Where in this memo does it address
what's that?
the revisions in time relative to the demolition ordinance?
It should be added to public participation on page 6. See on page 6, number 1, list, are you speaking specifically of
Well, I
Lackawanna?
was thinking of the activities that we devoted during the year. So this is an annual report.
Right. So on page 6,
Okay.
list of all undertakings initiated by the local government during this time.
You want me to add the demolition ordinance
Well,
amendment?
yeah, I think we devoted substantive time to it. I think we ought to have it in there.
But isn't that, we haven't adopted that?
Well,
yet.
that's okay. This doesn't require completion, does it?
Oh,
I
okay.
can say that was initiated and it hasn't been
Okay.
voted
I
on yet.
think
And then
I
in
would-
next
that's the
year's
only thing I would
report,
add to it.
Okay, all
in
right.
next year's report, I can, if it's adopted,
Say it was
I can-
adopted,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, no, I did think of that, Jerry, but I thought it was conditioned on if it was adopted. But you're right, you have to add that, because we spent
Okay, I don't
a lot of time on that.
Okay,
Okay,
will do.
great. Okay, so we have 3 additions to this report, Tommy. Great, all right, thank you.
I have a question, Tommy. since I don't get paper copies and I get digital
You
copies,
want some paper?
yeah, no, is there a way, because I was getting lots of different emails with different pieces,
Yeah.
and, when I go back, it's very hard to find everything in one place.
Mhm.
And it doesn't reside in the agenda, any of these things,
Right.
right? Is there a way to access all the documentation that we're gonna look at?
Yeah,
at a meeting and-
I could probably do maybe like a Dropbox link each week that just has everything in it.
For each meeting?
Yeah, and then that way I can take things out and put things in as
That would
they
be-
get updated.
That would be helpful,
Okay.
because,
We-
like right now, I don't have
Right.
access to those paper copies that.
And we discussed that this morning, too, because I
Mm-hmm.
found I couldn't find the resolution, and I've noticed that it takes me a while to get through the threads are very long, to
Yeah.
go through 15
Right,
messages,
right,
and then not know if it's the correct one or not.
Yeah,
So,
we can start doing it that
Thank
way,
you.
that's fine.
yeah, I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so Tommy, you're going to start a Dropbox for all the pertinent information.
Yeah, and we're migrating to a new website soon. I'm not sure exactly when, but I think we're gonna start using Google Drive for our application materials. So at that point, we'll use Google Drive instead, but it'll work the same.
Okay.
And so while we're on this, may I ask about the township website and the historic inventory map? Is that, because
I'm working on that.
Okay.
I'm almost there with it. I've had to go and manually rename every single survey, so
oh,
it's just taking a long time, but it's
Okay.
almost ready.
okay.
And it
Is
will
it,
be up.
is it partially up, or, because some
There-
things I find right away and other things just they don't click, they don't come up?
All of the surveys associated with potential historic district properties that were surveyed as part of CLG grants, those links will not work. I had to take all of those down when we found out that the estate area was having issues with accuracy. But they'll all be back up, and the commuter area will be up as well.
Do you have a timeline, do you have a estimated?
Next
Not
week,
to-
maybe
not to
sometime.
pressure you.
I think probably next week at
Oh,
some
that's
point.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, good, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, then, moving to our new business, we have a Board of Adjustment referral, application 2834, 44 Eagle Rock Way, the installation of an in-ground pool. Are you here for that application? Okay, would you please come forward?
Yep, you can go ahead, have a seat, and then press the push button, and then it'll light up green.
Hello.
Hi.
Good
I'm on both the blue team and the gray team.
So, do you want to swear them in, Jason?
Oh, we haven't returned for that.
Oh, I'm
Well,
sorry,
yeah,
no, Ms. Bauer. Yes.
Swear them in.
I do.
Now, could you state your name and your relationship to the project?
My name's Besa Owen.
Okay.
I'm an owner of the property.
And I'm David Owen, and I'm an owner, co-owners.
Okay. And so you'll describe the project?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you look on the survey,
Which is,
you'll, I think they have it, but it's over here as well. You'll see. Or sorry, this is great,
The plan?
before you start, I just let me do a brief introduction.
Okay.
Okay? So the subject property is located within the Estate Potential Historic Resource District and is identified as a potential historic resource for the potential district. It has been individually surveyed as part of the Preservation Montclair Inventory of Historic Properties in June 1981. And again, the address is 44 Eagle Rock Way. The applicant proposes installation of an in-ground swimming pool and patio northwest of the existing house along the west property line. The project includes altering the existing brick wall that extends west from the northwest corner of the house to accommodate the entrance to the pool area, constructing a new brick wall around the pool area to match the existing one, the installation of yard drains around the pool, and the associated pool equipment. Access to the pool area would be from an extension of the asphalt driveway north of the house. Okay, now if you could just,
Right, all of that is accurate except for one,
Okay.
one point. So even though there's an access arrow there coming from the asphalt driveway, I think that's meant to indicate where the construction vehicles will get access to that portion of the property. There won't actually be an extension of the driveway there. That'll continue to be green lawn.
okay.
Okay, so generally, that description of the project is accurate. As you can see here, we've got a large lot of land, but it's largely to the north of our house, and that happens to be a corner lot. The vast majority of our property surrounding our, the vast majority of the border surrounding our property does have foliage of varying degrees, both trees, bushes, et cetera, that do block, particularly in the summertime, views into our property. Our intention was to create as little of a disruption to the view from external to our property. In fact, it was part of a prerequisite for us even engaging in this plan that we maintain the aesthetic of our property. And unless we were able to get designs or contractors that have assured us that they can do that, we weren't going to go forward with the plan. Fortunately, we found a fantastic designer in Landmine, they're local, who created designs that looked very pleasing aesthetically and synced up with the rest of our property. So there is a brick wall that goes around a small courtyard to the west of our property there. You can see it with some curved lines that goes kind of to the right of our carriage house and to the west of our property. So ideally,
I think we have pictures of that, right? All right, because it might just be easy, we
Yeah.
have copies here, but it might be easier when you're explaining it to see.
Is there a pointer you can use as well?
It's a question for Rick, I can ask him.
would it be better if I stood up there and used the mouse?
Yeah, you can use this mic.
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, so if you want to scroll through, there's, I don't know how many pictures.
Excellent photography, if I might say. I don't know who did that, no. Yeah, so this is the view of our property from Eagle Rock Way. As you can see, there is lots of foliage around the border of the property, which gets very lush during the summertime. This gives a good sense of scale to the property. So looking up from the edge of our driveway, you can see our house. Where the pool would go is actually going to be completely blocked off by this grove of trees here. It's behind there. So the real view of the pool that you can see from the street will be not here, that's from another part of the driveway. If you look to the very left here, you'll see there's a play set. That play set would be removed, and that's where the pool will go. I want to get, so this is the inside of the courtyard I was referring to. And if you see behind all of that foliage, it's very hard to see here. But behind this line of foliage here and back here and behind where the photograph is taken, there is a 6-foot brick wall. And what our intention was is to create a brick wall that extends outwards from here towards the north side of our property and would extend all the way around the pool. And that would create an impervious block from view from both our neighbors, but also both sides of the street. We would create a small gap in the wall that is currently blocked by this foliage, and that would be our main entranceway into the pool area. But it would create some disruption from the existing brick wall. There would also be a gap in the brick wall on the northern side that would allow access into the pool. We would also engage a landscaper. We're still in the process of engaging our landscaper, but to put similar foliage that currently exists in the property around the full outside of that brick wall, so it's not simply a bare wall. So that's the general gist of the project. This is a good indication of the brick. Now, what's interesting about the brick wall is it appears that there must have been some damage or some reconstruction of the wall at some point in the history of its life cycle. So down here below is clearly an older brick, and up here is a newer brick, although still seems quite old from view. But what we did ensure was that our landscaper, and we have multiple bids in for the hardscaping, is that they would use their best efforts to match the existing style of brick that's in this brick wall. Now that's going to be a little bit difficult because they don't make these types of bricks anymore, and so you have to source a brick that kind of looks like that brick, but is not the exact same thing. I've been told they're called clankers. But either way, our hardscaper is prepared to do whatever they can to kind of match that existing style of brick. The two gates will be iron gates like this, but they'll be bigger and swing out. I don't think there's photos of some of the other gates on our property, but and then this is the location a little bit more up close. The brick wall will extend out this way and then go towards our neighbor's property. Now, one of the added benefits of this from our perspective is that it will create a better barrier between our neighbor's property and ours. We have been discussions with our neighbors about putting in some sort of fence, and this kind of solves that problem as well. You know, this is a driveway of theirs, and they keep their garbage there and stuff. It would be nice to have a block. And this is, now during the summertime, this is all fully fleshed out foliage, and so you can't see as much in there, but as you can see during the wintertime, it's a little bit more visible. That's a view of our neighbor's property. And this is the view from the edge of our property, but I think there's another picture here from the road. So this is a good representation of what somebody would see from the road looking towards that wall. Here you have the play set, but instead of that play set now there'll be a brick wall with you know, plants and trees in front of it. And that's the general gist.
Okay, great, thank you. So you're seeking two variances, and the variances are to allow distance from the street line to a swimming pool to be less than the distance between the street line and the main front wall of any structure on the property. And then the other variance is to allow a wall taller than 3 feet between the side street line and the setback of the principal building, correct? Okay. So if that concludes your testimony, we'll see if the commissioners have questions. You want to start, Mike? I'll start with you.
So the portion of the wall that you're looking to remove, is that visible from the street?
Not
right now,
really.
'cause
Not really, right?
There's foliage right in front of it, and we're gonna remove it so that there's a gate, because you have to have, you know, make sure that the kids can't get in the pool. So we're going to have them design it so that it kind of, you know, I don't know what it's called, kind of like a step down, so that it can like look nice with the gate.
And then, but it looks like if you're adding that fence, though, it will block the removed portion. Am I
That's
correct about that?
Yeah.
So you won't even really be able to
That's right.
see the change to the gate.
That's right.
Okay. And I think our purview, we have to kind of imagine it without the foliage, if I'm not mistaken, Chair, right? So, and you said that the designer is looking to match the existing brick wall that is currently there? Okay. All right, those are my only questions
So
for now.
without
Yeah.
the foliage, in the wintertime in particular, it is possible to see the brick wall theoretically. I'm trying to vision my mind's eye, but it's a fairly large distance, about 75
Significant distance from the street.
or 75 yards, actually.
Right, okay. Okay, those are my only questions for now, thank you.
Jason?
I don't have any questions.
I don't either. John?
Who was the previous owner of this house? You know,
Their last name was Kincaid.
Kincaid, okay. Yeah, I did work on this, or I know this house very well.
A lot of people know this house.
Yeah.
Everybody comes to our house, they're like, we like this house.
These are questions at the moment, okay. I'm looking at the site plan, and this is obviously an engineer's site plan as opposed to, it's hard to tell what any of this really looks like. So it's hard to, it's going to be hard to comment on it, but is the heavy line the new brick wall? Is that what I'm reading here? Just to the outside
you
of
looking
the
at the
area
same-
drains?
Yeah, so this dark line here is
Okay.
the perimeter of the wall.
And is that wall, and you're saying, is that wall, does that wall match the same height as the existing wall of the?
That's the
It
intention.
will?
That's the
Okay,
intention,
that's
yes.
okay. And, you know, I've noticed that the existing wall is made in a certain way. It has like a different kind of layout of brick at the top, and you're going to match that kind of detailing as you go along?
That is the intention, yes.
Okay.
The one difference I will note, just in full disclosure, is that I think the existing wall is fully brick through and through. One difference between
Okay.
the current wall.
It's going to be a veneer?
Yeah,
as
exactly.
opposed
So
to
there's going to be
full
concrete
brick.
in the middle.
Okay.
Now, visually, it should be exactly the same, but it'll be slightly differently constructed.
Okay. Okay, those, I guess that's the wall is going to be the same height. Is it going to be, the grade changes though? Is the wall going to stay the same at level all the way around?
That's
Or is it
right.
gonna slope- Is it going to slope with the landscape?
So it's a good question. They're going to take the dirt from the pool, and they're going to make sure it's very level.
Okay, so
And then
that, so this all
right.
lines up like that?
So we're going to put a
Okay.
level on top of the wall to make sure
Okay.
that bubble's in the middle.
What, and I'm reading, I see this little, it looks like a fence line where the S is, oh, no, that's, must be a utility. How do you close this pool off from access? Is there a fence beyond all of this?
Well,
That's
our-
going to get erected around this?
So we'll have the brick wall that will have only 2 points of entry, which
Right.
is this, and we're
Right.
planning on having those be locking gates.
The way I'm reading the fence, or reading these steps up in, it looks like it goes down through I'm not, so you're going to put a gate right on top of those steps at the brick
Yeah,
wall?
they're not gonna necessarily be like steps, it's gonna be like the blue
Little
stones
platforms
that we
that step
have,
down.
like in our backyard.
It's not going to, they're not going to be steps that go up or steps that go down. Those
It's
are
just
just going
Oh,
to be.
those are just
Yeah, yeah,
pavers?
yeah. Yeah, just
Okay,
like a
got
paver
it,
walkway.
got it. Okay. I noticed that there's like a wrought iron gate that exists now. Are you going to try to match that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
And
I don't have any
both
other
sides.
questions.
Mr. Sweeney?
One question. What's the height of the fence or fencing that you must put around a pool for safety purposes?
I
4
don't
feet.
know the answer to
Four-
that, but I do know that it's
4 feet.
less than 6 feet.
Say it again?
4 feet.
It's 4 feet. Okay.
A non-climbable 4 feet.
4 feet is a pretty low fence for, okay. That was my only question. Thank you. That's all you need for?
Okay.
Well, you can't.
So
I can't
you're-
even have a ladder or something.
You're in receipt of Mr. Conley's, who's not here tonight, our historic preservation consultant. You received his report,
Yes.
correct? Okay, and so I'll just go through it. So the proposed brick walls to surround the proposed pool, rather, differ from the existing in location and shape. An effort shall be made to preserve historic walls where possible. But you testified that you are going to preserve the historic walls, and you're going to try to
Yes.
match as best you can.
Yeah, he might have been looking at the pool company's rendering, but the intention is that the design is to match the existing wall.
Okay. And then we don't have a detailed drawing, and I think that's what John was getting at, about the existing, a detailed drawing of the existing and proposed walls shall be prepared that shows the walls and stairs in plan and elevation, along with detailed specifications, cut sheet samples, and manufacturer's product information of the proposed walks, gates, and doors.
So I think we have the detailed drawings from our designer that we can probably send it to you, Tommy. And then as far as the actual materials, I mean, we can provide samples of that. We haven't engaged our contractor yet because we just haven't had approval yet, so.
Okay.
And they require a pretty hefty deposit, but we're happy to share those with you.
Well,
once
but
they're-
that would be something, a condition that we would then see, that this commission would look at before you started, you know.
That would go what, to the design review
Right.
Right.
committee? Is that it?
Welcome,
Okay.
John.
So
Yeah.
Welcome to the design
procedurally-
review committee, yeah.
Procedurally, once you go, next week you're going to the Board of Adjustment.
Right.
The HPC is going to make recommendations after tonight, and then the Board of Adjustment, if they approve the project, will likely include those as conditions of approval, which would probably require you to go to a committee of the HPC with all of these items.
Okay.
Which would be something that it wouldn't be a public hearing or anything like that.
Okay.
It would just be.
Okay. Yeah, well, happy to do that. It's just a sequencing matter because we can't really engage our hardscaper until we have this approval.
Right.
Because
Right, it
otherwise-
wouldn't be until after
Okay.
you received an approval
Okay,
from
got
the
it.
board.
All right, great, got it.
Okay, so those were the two points that Tom had to make, and we'll open up for discussion.
Actually, I have one quick question that I'm noticing on the plans. The proposed pool equipment location that's gonna be outside of the new wall, what are you proposing for that equipment
Yeah.
storage? Is it, just like, an 8x3 bin, or is it something more permanent?
So for movable storage, we're gonna have bins within the wall, I think. As far as the pump, I think the pump
It's the
goes,
actual mechanicals.
yeah, so the pump would go right here and would be surrounded by bushes and other
Okay,
greenery.
so you're gonna have landscaping around that?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And then just for reference, just because this looks like a big, this is a drainage mechanism
Mhm.
where pipes will go into it to make sure that the rainwater kind of goes through
Yeah.
and away from the hard surface.
Any fencing, or is it all landscaping?
This will be underground.
It will be underground,
Yeah.
got it, okay.
Any other questions?
Nope, that's it.
Okay,
Thank
Mike,
you.
discussion?
Sure, I think in general, I appreciate that they're preserving the walls, the existing walls. I think it's set back significantly from the street, from both streets. I think as long as the design review committee can take a look at the materials, the design, make sure it matches, I'm supportive of the application.
Yeah, same here, I totally agree. I understand that, you're constrained by what materials you can get, but, as close as you can get to the existing would be great, and, I support the application and the requested variances. I don't think it would have any significant impact from a historic and visual perspective. Basically, you're taking what's the existing wall, mimicking it and just moving it a little bit closer. I don't think you really can tell much, especially with all the vegetation you have.
And I'm in general support of it as well. I think it'll be a nice improvement, especially to the neighborhood. Just caution with the brick, because just having dealt with brick, it's been a nightmare to try to match it, so I hope.
We've been,
Yeah.
so we have Landmine and Lisa Mirop, who, she has all of the plant selections that are supposed to be really great year-round. We've been basically just interviewing people and making sure that, like, through Lisa and Frank, they've been
Mhm.
introducing us to people that can actually do really good work.
Oh, good.
Because it's a great house.
Yeah, basically the entire basis of our contractor selection is around the bricks. They've warned us that that's gonna be the.
I don't know
primary.
if we need to correct it, or maybe it's just maybe we should write a note. I just wanna make sure that, like, when we do present the materials, like, that we're not referencing that little entryway as steps, and it would just be like the bluestone walkway.
I think you could
Yeah.
probably provide that material as part of this potential condition
Okay.
after the fact.
Okay. John?
I'm generally in support of this as well. I know when we were looking at this property, there was a lot of discussion about breaking it into two lots. I like the fact that when you do this, it's going to be very hard to break it into two lots, so it's going to keep the general sort of landscape there, so that's a positive thing. I can make a suggestion to you to where to find brick, because we do this all the time, and can I suggest a place to go to? No.
Okay.
Okay.
Off the record.
Off the record, I'll send
That
you
would be
to.
great.
Okay, that would
They
be
have,
much
they
appreciated.
have, they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of samples.
Okay,
So you
fantastic.
should be able to find something very close.
Great.
And I would say it's more than it's not just the brick, it's also the mortar.
Right.
Okay, it's probably a soft mortar as opposed to a hard mortar, so,
Okay.
you know, that just takes a little bit extra
Right.
thought.
Right.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
I'm generally supportive of it. I know you have to put a safety fence around it, and there's different kinds of fencing. I think the best way to do it is having a historic brick fence put around it. So I support that, and I do encourage you to try to look for historic brick from whatever source you get on the record or off the record.
Appreciate that.
So, but generally, again, I support it, and I think it's, the brick is essential for safety and for historic preservation, so.
And Tommy, in the referral memo to the zoning board, can you please note, you know, because it does relate to the requested variance for the 6-foot wall rather than 3, that it's important that that variance gets granted so that it's consistent with the existing 6-foot wall.
I can sort of continue my point on that, because the existing wall is 6 foot.
Right.
And it doesn't make sense to have a 6 foot and then drop down to a 4.5 or otherwise.
Agreed.
It looks odd, and 6 foot, I think, is also more consistent with the values you want to preserve, safety and privacy.
Right.
Okay, so we're in agreement to support this application with the condition that the wall be 6 foot, and also matching the brick,
they'll
And
come
return it,
back
yeah, to the-
and we come back,
to
right, and to
design,
return to the design.
Or as they develop this, right, we go to the site and look at the
Right.
materials.
So that's 3 conditions.
Yes.
Okay,
Those
good.
are noted.
All right.
I'll send you guys the memo once I have it drafted out.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. It
Thank
sounds
you.
like a great project.
Thank
Hope
you
it-
guys very much.
You
Really appreciate
expect
it.
to have it done for the summer?
That's that's the hope, but it's a little aspirational, I think, given how things have been going.
You can see that the kids can't wait.
Yeah.
They said those slides are a little bit too short.
Well, thank you.
Sorry?
Yeah, I can get that.
Yeah, we can take a
We could take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Right. We'll take a 5-minute break. All right, thanks, Rick. All right, back from our short break. Next up on the agenda is a discussion of the draft demolition ordinance amendment. So this is a ordinance amendment that the HPC worked on last year, and there was some changes made to it that we caught before it was given to the council, and changes were made on it again. We were very fortunate to have the expertise of our new lawyer, our new attorney, be able to review this. And I'm just going to go over very briefly what the meeting that we had, and then I'm going to hand it over to Janine so that she can explain it. Basically, what we looked at was definitions. So what had happened is that structures had been taken out and buildings had been interjected, and we realized that that would then mean that any structure which wasn't a building would be able to be demolished. So we couldn't have, we decided that that was not a good thing. Yeah, like that wall or like anything down at Lackawanna. So we decided that definitions were very important. And with that, after meeting with Janine, she suggested that we keep the definition of historic building site or structure that then follows along the MLUL definition. So that is on page 2, line 28, which gives a definition of a historic building site or structure. Remove, the next paragraph, remove historic structure, because that is then redundant. The other thing that you'll see throughout the document is we kept that verbiage, building site or structure, which goes throughout the document. And then, especially on like page 3, it says permits for total demolition or removal of historic building sites or structure. So, and then the following paragraph, which is totally demolish or remove. So demolish or remove has been used together, and building site or structure has been put in throughout the wording in this. The one thing that I know, speaking to some other members, is on page 5, conceptual plans for any building or structure. And that was, I'll ask Janine to explain that, because that came out of, I believe, our meeting with, which was just this week. And
That one was actually, that was something that was removed by the EDC.
oh, the EDC.
So, yeah,
Okay.
just a quick, I mean, this document looks crazy with all the colors and stuff, but briefly, if it's highlighted in yellow, it was either the planning department or the EDC, some combination of those. Green came from Janine, red came from Jerry, just so we could
Did they
keep
say-
track of everything. And then there's a clean version that doesn't have any of the colors, so it's easier to read.
Did they indicate why they removed that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can go over that, because that was something that it was the planning department and the EDC. But essentially the thought there was that the consideration of whether something should be demolished or not shouldn't have anything to do with what the intention of what's to be built there. The
Not
review
even
of
a
the
factor?
Sorry?
Not even a factor for consideration? Because we're balancing interests here, right? We're not saying that one factor is going to be determinative of our decision-making.
Well, so yeah, so the thought there also is that the HPC is going to see what's being proposed there when it comes through the planning board or the board of adjustment anyway, and at that point it'll be more detailed. You'll be able to make comments on a more fleshed out plan, but also the consideration of whether something should be demolished or demolition is warranted or not warranted shouldn't have to do with what is going to be built there after the fact. It should be based on the structure or the building as
That
it
exists, currently exists.
Right. So that's why that was removed in the EDC also. Just thought that would be kind of, I don't know. It's we just didn't think that it was appropriate at this stage of the review for the demolition of the structure, and so, go ahead.
Practical considerations of an applicant comes before the HPC to remove a building or demolish it. Is it unlikely that they have some plans for a new replacement building?
No, of course.
If it is, it probably, it does seem to me as a relative factor.
Well, right, but again, those projects will get referred to the HPC regardless as part
Is
of
the
the development
concern,
review.
Tommy, that if they're basically getting these plans on spec, because if they don't get the demo ordinance, then they're out this.
The concern is that
the money for the site plan or whatever.
no,
they need.
it's not really a financial thing. It's really that. I guess I think of a situation where I guess the HPC would otherwise say, yeah, there's really no merit to this building historically. It's okay to be demolished, but then they see the concept plan and they don't like it, and they say, actually, it should stay. It has merit, and it's not relevant to the review of just the demolition. The demolition is based on what's there now.
That's actually, okay.
And again, the HPC is still going to get their chance to review that as part of the development application.
Well, not necessarily, because if it's not going before planning board or zoning board.
That's okay. That's fair. But
and because the demo ordinance is broader than HPC jurisdiction, because it could be a surveyed site for a proposed district, but then it doesn't become a district, and if it doesn't need variances, if it's
right.
one or two family.
So if it's not a development application, then the HPC would not see it. If it's an as of right project, but for larger projects, almost there's so many site plan triggers that almost everything is going to get referred.
I guess what could happen, though, is someone can apply for, I mean, it goes to scale of the neighborhood or scale of the street and other factors other than the historic fabric of the building itself, that someone could come along and say, this is not, the building itself doesn't have any qualities. I want to tear it down. They tear it down. Now we have an empty lot that could just sit there.
Which is
for years and years.
Isn't context part of the criteria for review? The district's character and context. That's part of the review criteria. So I think if that's the concern.
But what keeps a developer or whoever's dealing with saying, yeah, we're going to put back something in similar scale, and then it never happens. I don't know. It's I don't know how you get around that, but I guess that could always they could present what they're proposing to do, and then they never do it too. There's nothing you can force them to do.
There's nothing to make sure that they,
Right. I mean, if you guys think it's important that this stays in, we can make that recommendation. That doesn't mean it's going to, but we can make that part of your recommendation.
This is
to the
information to be
council.
provided. If it's not provided, we have to assume that they're gonna leave it vacant. It's gonna be an empty hole. And I think that's a bad way of approaching it. I think we want to have some kind of information provided as to what they're going to do with to replace what they're removing. We've described it as conceptual plans. That's not detailed drawings or anything. Perhaps conceptual plans are too explicit, but I think conceptual plans are the right thing. What is the concept? What you're going to put there? Otherwise, we're going to assume it's going to be an empty space, and it's going to be an added negative.
I guess we could just assume it's going to be an empty.
Yeah, we'd have to assume it.
And base our determination on that if they don't present something.
Yeah, so I think that's a bad way of doing it. And we have the two provisions related on page 5 and the subparagraph 7 on page 6. They relate to each other. One is you provide the information, and the other is you evaluate it, and they go in hand in hand.
Right, they
And
were
I-
added
and I,
together.
And I looked at that, and I admit, when I looked over the prior, I think, it's not that we've had overload, but we've seen it so many times. But I think something has to be there to describe what the plans are for use of the place and/or replacement of the building structure that's being removed.
In particular, if there's a site where it would not trigger HPC review after the fact, after the demolition.
I'm just trying to think of what, aside from an as-of-right construction project, when that would be the case. And I don't think, something where there's no actual building being constructed. Even site work, though, the HPC would review. Like you did with the Fort Duryea project. That didn't really have any, there was a pool house, I guess, but it was mostly site work. But yeah, I mean, if it's reviewed for demolition, it's tagged in some way that will make it come to you guys in the event that there's a development application filed. So I think unless it's as of right and no body is reviewing it, then you would see it.
Well, then, if we can at least have that carve out, assuming, that it's going to be rare instances, we should still protect ourselves in the event of rare instances where we don't have review. I think the EDC should consider that we should have some understanding of what's going to go into this area that we potentially don't have any further review over after the demolition.
Right.
It should be a
And I think
fact. It
that-
should be at least be a factor, and
Well, I think the way it's written should probably just stay. I don't think there's a good way to craft it such that you can say like, well, in instances where there's not a development application filed, then at this stage, they have to present a concept plan because people aren't going to know necessarily at this stage whether they're going to need variances, whether.
Well, I'd like to hear a legal opinion on that. What is your thought on whether that could be properly worded?
Well, I mean, anything can be worded, but I take Mr. Graham and Mr. Sweeney's point, and that is, that's an awkward way to do it.
Is the light on?
It's an awkward way to do it, what's been suggested, so I take Mr. Sweeney's and Graham's point, really, unless some kind of concept plan is reviewed, it doesn't have to even be a rendering, but, if you can't tell, for instance, what the mass and scale of the building is, or whether it's gonna be a parking lot, or, and have no mass and scale, you can't actually figure out, this was a bit of a substitute that I see was added here, but it's very hard to figure out on page 6, so a little bit above the middle, VI, the probable impact of its removal upon the character and ambiance of the landmark district. I mean, that assumes it's in a district, but nevertheless, the purpose of the two factors that were removed here, VII and H, are to not to fudge, because, I think that's what you were kind of talking about in the beginning. Well, something that doesn't have architectural merit or warrant is the word we used. I removed merit as too vague, but then when we see something, obviously it doesn't include me, but when the commissioner sees something that they don't like, then they'll have a different opinion. But that's not really how to look at it. The way they want to judge the demolition itself is by virtue of the replacement in the context of what it's, where it's going. I mean, a parking lot might be fine some places, and it might be horrible in other places. And so it is context sensitive, and, obviously, it's up to the commission whether they want to make a recommendation that, this or some wording like it, is put back, and that can be considered by council when, the governing body. But that was the intent of the original. I mean, I had nothing to do with it. That was already there. And I can also tell you that that's a common feature in demolition ordinances that I've seen
was
and
gonna be
been
my
familiar
question.
with.
It's helpful to know.
It's very
Yeah.
common.
So I can suggest another, as to this paragraph, I probably, if I would change it, I'd say conceptual or other plans for the buildings or structure proposed or planned, adding or planned by applicant to replace the structure, the historic building or structure to be totally demolished. And I would eliminate the line, including a design of the replacement structure, because I don't think we need a design. I think that's getting ahead of the curve. I would delete that.
But the thing is,
Right.
if they have it, they should,
Say it again?
if they have it, it could be included.
Oh, well, that's why I
If they
said
don't,
conceptual and other
yeah.
plans. The other
If they don't,
plans
there's
could
the waiver.
include design plans if they have that far. So that's why I say conceptual or other plans. And then I'll delete this thing, because we're not gonna require a replacement, the actual design of the replacement structure. We wanna get some kind of sense of, but we don't
Yeah.
want that kind of detail.
For instance, this whole demolition ordinance started with the two houses that
Right,
got torn
up on-
down on Lloyd, was it Lloyd?
Lloyd, yeah.
Lloyd Road, okay. So, now, there was a proposal, well, after the fact, they came back with a giant house. So it would be nice to know that how what's being proposed is changing the character of that neighborhood.
Yeah,
They tore down two houses, that doesn't mean they're putting two houses back or something of, the houses alone by themselves, even if they don't have historic character, have character by being of a certain mass on those sites in that
Absolutely.
neighborhood. So, it's,
It gives you context, and I think it's an important factor.
So Jerry, do you have or Tommy, do you have the word?
Do you all agree with the wording that he suggested?
Well,
I do
we
have
need you
that.
to-
I can read it
can you
the way
read it?
that Jerry just said it. Okay. So this is H, conceptual or other plans for any building or structure proposed or planned by the applicant to replace the historic structure sought to be totally demolished. I guess we should add building, site, or structure to that.
historic building or structure. Yeah.
Maybe we say design, conceptual, or other, so that we put that in there.
Conceptual, design, or other
Yeah.
plans? Okay, I'll start over then. Conceptual, design, or other plans for any building, site, or structure proposed or planned by the applicant to replace the historic building, site, or structure sought to be totally demolished, and a statement of how the replacement structure will affect the character of the neighborhood. At the request of the applicant, the HPC shall grant a waiver of this requirement upon a finding of good cause.
I'm okay using just structure without building, because in the definition of the HPC ordinance, structure is a broader concept that includes example of a building.
Yeah.
So it's okay, but I like that approach, and that's acceptable to me.
So may I ask Janine then, what her opinion is of that paragraph?
I think that's fine. I would beg the commission's indulgence to stick with historic building, site, or structure only because there are sites, I don't know if there are any in Montclair, but we discussed this, like the example I always give is at Gettysburg, there are sites that are just, hills, because this general stood on this hill and this general stood on this hill, and you plowed under the hill, you ruin the site, and that's it, and it has nothing to do with buildings or structures. So when I come around to explaining why we did that, that's one of the examples I'll use, but otherwise, I think that's fine. I think it's very good.
I would agree with keeping site in there.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the big mound across from the Clary Anderson Arena.
Absolutely.
That I was told was an Indian mound when I moved here 40 years ago. All right. And then if we proceed to page 6, number 7, BII, which was,
That would stay. That would
Right.
stand as written.
And after the word proposed, say proposed or planned.
Got it.
all right, and then on the little,
And then I'll also
Violation-
say, sorry, still on page 6, because this is something that I changed after I struck through that number 7.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of Janine's edits. It's the very last line on page 6. Under the criteria of section 3A, 1 through, I changed it to 6, but it will now say 7.
okay.
Mhm.
So, I just want to go over this before I hand it over to Janine. Violations and penalties, this was the EDC who put that, correct?
So this was actually the township attorney drafted this portion of the ordinance. It was written a different
Hey,
way
Tommy?
after, yeah.
Tommy, going back to, if we just have the reference to 3A, I through, or 1 through 7 now,
Mhm.
Yeah.
can we eliminate 4A, 1 through 7?
Where
Where are you seeing that?
what page?
On page 7.
7?
It says, the first part is satisfied if upon consideration of the following factors, the site structure is sort, do not warrant preservation. Do we just, instead of writing that all out again, just call back to 3A, 1 through 7?
Oh, I see. Well, 7 actually wasn't put in this section. It only goes through 6.
Yeah, I thought 4 was different because it's the removal and
Okay.
relocation.
Yeah, I think they're slightly different.
Okay, so, yeah, then should we not have the call out back to 3A?
Oh, I see. I see what you're saying. Oh, so you're saying that should say 4A, 1 through 6.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Say that again?
Oh, it's just, this needs to get changed to 4, so it will refer to this text.
Okay.
As the test.
Yeah, that makes sense. I see what you're saying.
Okay, and
Because
then,
it's spelled out already. Okay.
so you're going to change
Yeah.
that to 4.
Yes.
And then on page 10, going back to violations.
Wait, I'm sorry, can we just clarify? Are we
Oh.
talking about,
That
which?
right here. So this is removal.
Yeah.
And then on the following page, it has the factors of removal. But this, because it's 3 instead of 4, it's calling back to those factors up here for replacement. It's just, yeah,
But isn't it saying the preservation of historic building or site is not warranted under these factors? Now we consider these?
it's under those factors, yeah.
Oh, so you're saying change it to 4, where did you want to change it?
Change this to 4.
Change
That should be
3 to 4.
4A, Yeah.
And then 1 through 6 would stay.
4A, 1 to 6, okay.
Because that's referring to the test on the following page.
Which is this. Okay, we clear on that?
Good catch.
Okay.
Okay, and then, okay, so moving along to violation,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
what?
That's
Oh,
what
'cause it's
that's
not
what I'm
going
gonna
back.
go.
Okay,
Okay,
well, the
okay.
violations were crafted by the township attorney.
That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, I'm fine with that if they want stricter, if they think stricter penalties are.
I'm good
Right.
with the stricter
Appropriate.
penalties.
At one point, there was a
enforceable.
very, very high penalty that was incorporated in there that was since taken out
It's a high penalty.
because Mr. Burr determined that it was an illegal penalty.
Oh,
That was the $250,000.
Oh, gee.
wow, really?
A one-time-
After 25 days, it looks like you can get.
Okay,
That figure was in there for a period, but it was.
I
it
do
was
have
removed
a
after the
change
EDC
on,
split.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 10 and subparagraph 2. That's without first having obtained, I'm sorry, if any person shall undertake demolition or removal. I just want to add the words,
Okay,
or removal.
got it.
Good idea.
This gives us real power, I must say. It's
It's got teeth, yeah.
All right, and then moving along to page 11, which is number 5. There were a couple of,
Yeah, this language was borrowed from another demolition ordinance
okay,
to basically say that if you illegally demolish a historic structure, then no permits can be issued on the property for 5 years. So if people are trying to just get something torn down so they can quickly
Right.
build something, they can't.
is that, Janine, in your expertise, or in your experience, is 5 years a common time period?
The only moratorium type language that I'm aware of in the municipal land use law is 6 months, but, this is a different context than that, and the intent of that section, I have to say, I'm sure it would be tested,
Yeah.
and therefore,
I
a
haven't
Superior
seen
Court
it.
judge would decide what the answer to that is.
Okay.
I can't
I
remember
mean, it's
which
intended as a
ordinance.
penalty, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, isn't,
It was pulled from another township's ordinance. I can't remember which one off the top of my head.
I think
'cause, like,
5
aren't there
years is too long.
There's strict guidelines on penalties, though, for zoning violation, because it would be a zoning violation, right? So,
Okay,
Well,
my-
demolition permits are
Yeah.
like construction, building code, land, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a little both in this
And
case.
I think the other thing you have to, 5 years is a long time, but I think that what you have to consider is, if you're dealing with a situation where somebody pulls the building down because they don't want it to become a cause celeb at the HPC and, in the community, then they go through the entire site plan, probably subdivision, design, all the soft costs and everything else. You can eat up a lot of years. I mean, what if COVID happens again? So in a context like that, 5 years could be normal business. If you feel strongly, change it, but
yeah.
Is there also something we can state where the contractor can be penalized for failing to, not just the owner? Right? Doesn't this just apply to the owner? If the contractor doesn't pull the appropriate permits, can they be debarred from working in the town?
It says any person undertaking demolition, so.
Is that the owner, does that include the contractor? I mean, do we have to clarify that a little bit further?
I don't know.
I don't think I would do that, because any person means any person.
Any person.
I mean, who pulls the permit, that's often just kind of
It's a
serendipitous.
construction permit, it's usually the contractor pulling the permit.
Usually the
not
contractor.
And not the owner.
And,
And not the owner.
the owner and the contractor are gonna go like this. I mean,
Right.
we know that's gonna happen, but that's what I mean. If it's gonna be tested anyway, let all that get tested based on the facts that are produced as evidence.
Here are my comments. First, after the word demolition, on the third line, you'll have or removal, because a house probably would need to, a building would need to be demolished, but a structure might not, a smaller structure. Second, I think if we blocked it for 5 years or any lengthy period of time, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. We're saying if you violate it by tearing it down, you can't put anything back up. It's gotta be an empty space for 5 years. I think that's a bad way of doing it. Maybe a shorter period, 2 years, in my view, max, would be appropriate, but we don't want an empty space for
That's
5
also
years.
fair.
That's not consistent with history.
But maybe there's a more restrictive review of what then goes back, that somehow we have more power on,
Yeah, that may be a better way of doing it.
if you're gonna do this, we're really going to look at it, and you have to meet all the requirements that,
Unless
support.
waived by the HPC on an application showing that a historic building will be reinstalled. Something of that nature. I mean, that might be a way of approaching it.
So you're suggesting that, like, for instance, they have, whatever is being constructed there has to be reviewed by the HPC for a certificate of appropriateness?
Yeah, I
Even
like
if it's a
that idea.
development
That's-
application, it wouldn't
Well,
just be a referral,
I
it
mean,
would be a, I'm just trying to
If we have
clarify.
in A2, if you undertake demolition without a permit, I mean, there's a requirement to abate and reconstruct. I mean, if something's that egregious, I mean, we just make them reconstruct it.
Yeah, because that's in there.
Mm-hmm. Because like Jerry was saying, I don't like the idea of
Nothing.
a
being done.
permit
Yeah.
being blocked for 5 years and it just sitting there.
Yeah, that's my point. It's just,
Okay, so what, you're suggesting then to remove period of 5 years and put, and what do
Yeah,
we
just
have?
get, if it.
What was in there before? Didn't you, there was something in there before, wasn't there?
No,
this is
this-
brand new.
This is
Okay.
new.
I thought it was 2 years, but, maybe that's what I read somewhere
Should we
else.
just do, they're required to.
Yeah,
abate
I just get rid of
yeah.
the 5-year moratorium. It said, if a historic building, site, or structure subject to the provisions of these ordinances demolished or removed without first obtaining a demolition permit, and then go to the next sentence, the owner shall be afforded a 30-day period to cure or abate the condition and shall be afforded the opportunity.
Can you say that again? Sorry, I was on the wrong page.
Just delete everything between, no building permit shall be issued, and then the owner shall. So just eliminate that.
That
building
whole
permit
sentence.
word, yeah.
That whole,
Well, the
so
second
starting,
one-
It goes
42,
from the
43,
comma
right.
to the next sentence.
so then it would read, demolished or removed without first obtaining a demolition permit, the owner shall be afforded a 30-day period?
Yeah,
Okay.
to cure or abate.
How do we deal with that?
that concept that John mentioned, just, we would have the potential arguably to waive it if they delivered plans for either restoration of a historic building or structure, a historic appearing building or structure.
Well, not all the applications fall under our certificate of appropriateness now, right?
Right.
We could force that if you do this, then you have to come back to the historic preservation to get a certificate of appropriateness, even if it's not in a historic district or it's not a historic building, but it falls, I don't know, somehow put some restriction, give us more power to review and that's it.
So I think what John is saying is, in addition to, like, if there is a development application, normally it would get referred to the HPC, but you're saying the HPC has to grant a certificate of appropriateness in
There you
addition
go.
to
There you go.
the approval by the board.
It becomes
So I
much
think
more
that should be
abstract.
added to the,
Yeah,
if you're gonna do that, that should be added to the end of 5, where it says subsequent, and then the 2,000 per day may be imposed if a court is not determined otherwise. It is determined that the cure or abatement has not been substantially completed. If it was cured or abated, fine, hopefully. And then if not, essentially, then this extra review procedure kicks in whereby any new building, site, or structure must obtain a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yeah.
I would propose that we have Janine work on, and Tom, you work on the final text, and send it back to us again for a look at, because I don't know that we're going to be able to come up with the final language tonight.
I think that was the final
I think,
language.
I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're comfortable with that as the final
Yeah.
language?
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good.
Okay, then okay, we don't need to, then I withdraw my objection, because we do want to finish it, and I think it's a good concept to have in there.
so we.
Janine, you can send me that language? Okay, great.
So here's the crux of the matter. There is an urgency to this that it needs to be adopted. But we can't adopt it if we don't have a final copy of it. So, when,
But we're not the ones who adopt it, right? Like,
Yeah.
these are our
I mean,
recommendations.
our
to the-
recommendation,
Yeah,
our
yeah.
recommendation to, right,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah, and the township will
Yeah.
look at the final.
And they'll
But-
make their
Mhm.
decision.
So
Yeah.
can we do this then via email and not wait until the next meeting in March?
I mean, we've
Do
done
we
it.
wanna
have
adopt
the
it
final
tonight?
lang- We have
Yeah.
the final language here, let's just adopt it as amended.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
adopt it, Ginny, and if you can read the language back. and we'll-
And
Okay,
it's
that's
not,
all right.
we're not adopting this, I mean, we're adopting a,
Adopting our
We're recommending.
Adopt it as a
adopting our
recommendation.
recommendations. Yeah.
And I think, let's just,
Right.
we've gone over it, we've
Right,
Yeah,
got a
yeah,
consensus
yeah.
as we've been going through it, so let's just adopt the resolution recommending this ordinance, and then we can let Tommy
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
compile it, send it over to the council.
And
Before
we
that, I
don't
do
want to
one
have
more.
another meeting
all right.
on
I'm sorry,
this.
wait.
Yeah. I do have one more question about about the language that was changed, page
What
4.
page?
Page 4, 2C, written documentation by qualified historic preservation architect or
I have-
other professional. What's that?
Oh.
Oh, I was just gonna
I have
s-
a problem
yeah.
with C as well.
I have 2 questions
Yeah,
about
go
it.
ahead.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
sorry.
Where are you now? Oh, see, okay.
Page 4.
Okay, right.
Line?
19.
2C, first
Page
line.
8.
Do we need to
Sentence
define
8.
other professional further, other qualified, other competent, some kind of qualifier to other professional? Or is it already modified by qualified in that sentence?
Other
Michael, where is this?
design professional,
On page 4, Jerry, 2C, first line.
line 19
Okay.
on page 4.
Oh, I have
29,
29, John, yeah. Maybe we have different drafts, but,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Mine's 29.
You're looking at this draft, okay.
So my question was on other professional, whether we need to further qualify that or define
Well,
it.
Line
Secretary of
29.
Interior Standards has a definition of professional, don't they?
It does. It does. You could say design,
Design professional.
Other design professional?
Say
would that be-
design, right?
Would that be, that would be more?
or design professional that meets the Secretary of the Interior's.
Yes, yes,
Fine.
definition, yes.
Same language, good.
What is that exact language that meets the Secretary of the Interior's
Definition.
Definition.
definition
Sta-
of?
Of a design professional.
Or other, okay, so
Or
maybe we
other
say, or other
professional,
professional who meets
As-
these.
How about just other professional, comma, as defined by the Secretary of Interior?
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I would move to approve that revised version of the ordinance as our recommendation, if that's what we're ready to do.
Well,
Well,
I think we're
I
just,
have another, I have a.
Go ahead, John, you
Right.
wanna go for it? Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought we
This
Sorry,
is just, this is a question, not
Yeah.
really a
where are you?
Same section.
C.
Okay.
I don't understand C2. I don't understand what that is saying. I've read that about 4 times, and I don't understand what it means.
Okay,
That is basically, they have to certify or present some proof that they've tried to sell the property to someone that wants to maintain the historic structure. So before you can, you bought a historic structure knowing those restrictions were placed, before you knock down the building, try to sell it to someone who wants to maintain it. If you can't do that, then you're eligible for a demolition permit.
and that's always existed in the prior ordinance.
And then we also asked them for comps. That's the only thing I was a little confused about too, right? A reasonable or comparable price shall be demonstrated.
Comparable value to purchasers willing to remove and relocate the historic building, site, or structure
Well,
at the purchaser's expense to another location.
The site you can probably eliminate, because you can't remove the site, but,
But site is defined as a lot of different things.
oh, okay.
Okay. That's right.
So that,
Did you get an answer to that?
Evidence of good faith
Offers.
offers of the historic building, site, or structure for sale at a price that does not exceed its reasonable and comparable value to purchasers willing to remove and relocate the historic building, site, or structure at the purchaser's expense to another location with,
And-
I still don't understand it.
Okay,
It's
I can explain
it's a
one
tough
reason.
one.
So, first, the real concept is you want to have someone make a good faith offer to someone else who's willing to remove it and protect it and maintain the structure. That's it. However, you didn't want them to put a price on that was excessive. So that's why the rest of this lengthy issue about a price does not exceed is reasonable.
Exorbitant.
Okay.
You know, I know that adds a lot of complexity and burden, but if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have, and people would just say, you want to buy it? It's $1 million. Okay, is that going to satisfy it? No, because the structure may have value, but it can't have that kind of value because you got to either disassemble it or transfer it in whole.
So I guess, right, the concept is we want them to show what they could get if they sell it to somebody else, right?
Right.
But then we're also asking them to do comps
No, not so much that what they could get.
You don't want them to
Show
be
that they
unreasonable.
listed it.
that they listed it. No, I understand that part of it. I understand that part of it. And the offers would essentially be the market value. But then we also have, after section 3, we talk about comps. We ask them to provide comps. Is that
That's the justification that they set a reasonable offer price.
that they set a reasonable offer price? So if they come back and say, I couldn't get a reasonable offer price, we say, what are your comps? And then they show the comps, and that's a comparison. Okay, I got it.
And of
Okay.
course, the whole concept is that
Yeah.
if the structure of the building is historic, in removing it but keeping it some other place in tax still has value of preserving history, even if it's not in the same location.
Okay.
Any other questions? from-
It's, no question, it's
That's okay.
complex on that.
Okay.
The language is there,
The
well,
language?
I'm just wondering if we can streamline that section 2 a little bit. Evidence of good faith offers of the historic building site structure for sale at a price that does not exceed comparable value to purchasers willing to remove. Okay, actually, now that I'm rereading it again, it's making more sense. Remove and
I
relocate.
would give it a shot. They didn't object, the township and the township attorney and others did not object to that section.
It's actually kind of clicking reading this again. Okay,
Yeah.
after this conversation.
Read it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not concerned with 3, it's number 2.
2 was my primary concern, like John, but 3, I was wondering why it's actually after 3. We're defining how they obtain comps. But it makes more sense why they would be required to get both a market price and comps. I guess for them to come back and say, I didn't get a satisfactory price, and we say, well, what are your comps? And then they show comps, and we can have a baseline to judge.
Okay.
Okay.
Janine, do you have anything else to add to this discussion?
Well, I would just like to read the sentence that's now on the last page. It's not the very last sentence because it's before sub 6. So this is after the $2,000 a day penalty, basically after things are going sideways. Then it says, if the demolition or removal of the historic building, site, or structure has not been or cannot be cured or abated, any application for development for the property on which the historic building, site, or structure exists or existed shall obtain, that should be any applicant, sorry, applicant, shall obtain a certificate of appropriateness from the HPC as a mandatory condition of approval.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I think that sounds good.
Okay? That's it.
Okay.
Okay, you wanna move
I'm
now?
sure
You
those
wanna move
noddings
now?
on the
You want-
record.
You want to move now?
That sounds good, Jerry.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was recorded, Michael. I think we're all.
And that's to be injected after line 4, correct? Where does
That
go?
is after line 4, after the word completed. If the demolition or removal of the historic building, site, or structure has not been or cannot be cured or abated, any applicant for development for the property on which the historic building, site, or structure exists or existed shall obtain a certificate of appropriateness from the HPC as a mandatory condition of approval. I'm going to give you this, Tommy, and my handwriting's, you already are familiar with it.
Okay.
I just want to make one remark, and that is the historic building, site, or structure, even though there's redundancy built into that, that was not the purpose of it. The purpose of it was to be consistent with the municipal land use law, because the case law is really clear that while local ordinances can be broad, they still have to be consistent with the municipal land use law. And because the historic site definition in the municipal land use law is so good, and because the township was already going back and forth between building and structure, it just made sense to make it all consistent, not only internally, but with the MLUL, and that's why I did that. And also, I already mentioned the, sort of mounds, like Indian burial, that's another good example. That's really it. I mean, everything else is pretty self-explanatory, I think.
So if everybody, thank you very much. If everybody is in agreement with that, the next thing that we have to consider is the definition that's in our current ordinance, in 347-128, which is definitions. It's to replace the definition site with historic site. And the historic site, that definition would be any real property, man-made building or structure, national object or configuration of any portion or group of the foregoing, or which is the location of a significant event or series of events, a prehistoric or historic occupation or activity, whether public or private, which has been designated by the commission, the planning board, and the master plan, or in a periodic general re-examination report, or the governing body pursuant to NJSA 40, blah, 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 as having, I shouldn't say it, 40, semicolon 55D-65 or 65.1, has having historical, archaeological, cultural, scenic, or architectural significance. And that language is that from the MLUL?
That's primarily from the MLUL, and then there were some phrases within the definition that you're proposing to remove
Right.
that we thought were positive and we wanted to keep, so now it's sort of an amalgam of everything.
So this is.
But all the words in the MLUL are in there.
Are in here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're consistent with the ordinance that we just spoke about, and then the ordinance change here. So there would be two
Correct.
recommendations to the council, this and the other one. And you each got a copy of this, correct?
Yeah, well, it's right here.
Is there any discussion about that?
No, I think we should adopt it.
We're all in favor.
Yeah, I think we should, yeah. Or I do think we should recommend adoption of that
Recommend,
definition,
right.
yeah. So I would make a motion to recommend adoption of the change in definition to site, and to recommend and to adopt the recommendations of,
To recommend the draft ordinance
to
as
recommend
amended.
the draft ordinance as amended.
Great.
I'll second.
I second,
Yeah,
no.
we'll all second it.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great.
You just do that.
No, I think that was a useful
Exercise.
task, and I think we did a good job improving the ordinance, so.
All right, so the final thing on the agenda is to reschedule the July 13th meeting.
This is because I will be out of town. So
Where does it go back, July?
So I recommended July 20th, which is just the following week. So yeah, since we're all together, I figured we could talk about this and get that changed, if everyone's
I-
available.
Yeah, my calendar's clear.
I think that's fine,
Yeah.
if
Well,
everybody.
July
So July 20th?
July
I just want to make
20th.
sure that I'm not away that day. I'm just,
We will
Yeah.
need a
Okay.
motion on that.
Um,
think so.
no, I
To
think I can
change the-
just send notice
Yeah.
that the meeting was changed.
And so make sure you put that on the website, because we have
Will
our
do.
meetings on the website.
Will
too.
do.
Okay.
What's the new date?
July
July
20th.
20th.
Thank you, sorry.
Does anyone else have any other?
That doesn't conflict with any other use, any other.
No, not that I'm aware of. I'll double check before I do that, but it should be fine.
Okay.
I'll double check to make sure there's nothing else happening in this
All right,
space.
so it's 9:25.
The next one's called Adjournment.
Exactly. So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I make it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, see everybody next, March 9th. Thank you.
Thank you.